today we can just address this issue of how one finds a suitable architect for their needs. Maybe I'm an individual building a house, or I'm a commercial guy who's building a commercial building, or I may be in the profession of building buildings as a business, or I may want to build a factory. So this is always an intriguing point for most of the people, as how do I narrow down on an architect that this architect is the most suitable architect for my need. I guess this is an interesting conversation to have, because there will be a point of view from a general perspective, and as architects probably we can have a point of view to add. So if we can say that, let's say somebody wants to build a house, so what are your thoughts?
I think we can avoid a lot of frictions as we always experience between the client and architect in later stages of the project. There are a lot of frictions happens because of unsuitability of the project or the client or the architect. So to start with, I think what kind of building a person wants to build, type of building, meaning like whether it is a house or it's an institutional building or it's a commercial complex or office. Based on that, I think the person can shortlist few architects.
So can we kind of uh, generalize this, that you don't have an architect like, okay, this person is only specializing in houses. I'm not denying the fact that there is an area of speciality if you keep on doing things over a period of time. So that is always there. But that doesn't mean that this person is going to be the best suited for me for my need.
Yeah, that also depends. There could be some design elements which are really good in all building types. Based on that, building type could be different, and the practice what currently that architect doing is different. But your building is different. Still, the architect can be suitable based on the aesthetics or the output of the architect, I think.
So ultimately, it boils down to me as an individual. And if I have to choose an architect, I need to be very clear that I don't need to really go behind whether this XYZ architect has specialized in a certain area, but evaluate more from my perspective that this is my need and whether this architect is most suitable to my need.
Yeah, I think if you are a person who wants something innovative and different, that's a different scenario. But if you have clarity that you want, you know 100% clarity that these are the things you want, and if somebody is already doing that, might as well you go with that architect, I think.
Absolutely. I think this is an excellent point which is coming out, that clarity of thought on what exactly I as an individual need before even I really go and hunt for an architect.
Let's consider if the building type is residence. So total dynamics changes here, because in residence you can do anything. For example, you can climb down from a roof to the house. Like that can be accepted if, because it is individual choice, and residences there can be panorama of choices of being radical, being innovative and creative. If you consider any other building type, let's say airport, a lot of the criteria are predetermined where you cannot interfere much. Then we here, like residences, we can go on to different styles of architecture. What kind of style you want to adopt for your building? If I give example of hospital, if somebody wants to build a hospital, then hospital's peculiar requirements would be like the flow of patients and operation theater activities. There are so typical, and if some firm or architect has more experience, somebody would want to go with whatever standard practices going on in hospital buildings, then he might opt an architect who is already practicing in hospitals. But if someone wants to find out radical and different solutions for the same thing, to set a different rules or innovate or radical solutions for their functionality also, then they can come to some architects who are really specialized in not building types but any building types doing innovatively. That's how.
So if somebody wants to really experiment with innovation,
Yes.
then the building type really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Vivek, you spoke about the style of buildings. I think it's a very important dynamic, because the context is very important when we talk about the style of buildings. Particularly, you look at the built environment, where you are, what is the place where your building is going to be. situated, what is the habitat around it. I think does that not drive also on really narrowing down an architect? What are your thoughts here again?
So based on your location and surrounding atmosphere of the site also matters a lot. I think.
So, in essence, the style of the building necessarily need not be from that particular place where it is situated. It can always, you can always export styles. Architecture has always been organic. People have been experimenting. It's a continuous experimentation which happens.
Yeah.
But you mentioned about the climatical aspect. I think this is an important thing which probably one needs to bear in mind before really understanding that okay, my building is situated here, so what is the climatic impact or what sort of climatic impact I want to create in the building.
Yeah, I think climatic impact or consideration could be implemented in any style of architecture. I think it shouldn't be like if you go for a different variety of styles of architecture, in any style you can incorporate climatology of that local site, local area where you are going to build.
If we are doing a vernacular style of architecture or we are doing a contemporary, very postmodern type of architecture, of course we don't expect that an individual who comes from a non-architectural background really to understand or know these things very well. But it would be good for that individual to do some self-awareness on that there are various styles in architecture.
Yeah.
Maybe the architect can drive the decision on what style could be done, but this awareness would also help them to narrow down on finding the right architect for their building type.
Yeah, I think nowadays a layman is quite pretty much aware about because of the content available and habit of browsing through it. So every person is browsing nowadays, like so he would know his taste a little bit by just browsing different architecture styles.
Very much so. I would kind of not. I'm not disagreeing with you, but
Yeah.
I would feel that because of the explosion of knowledge through internet, how much of it is actually well perceived also is a question.
Yeah.
Because too much awareness also creates a confusion and there's non-clarity. I think that aspect also is very important for an individual to really bear in mind.
It's our also responsibility to guide a layman how to navigate through this and how to have more clarity on what kind of architecture style is comfortable for their lifestyles and the way they live life, and the occupation they are into.
So in essence, once we know what our building type is, we need to be aware also on what type of styles of architecture do influence the building types.
Don't you think that like prioritizing on certain aspects like budget, time period, and functionality of the building matters a lot also?
Very true. I think it's very important for the individual to really evaluate on the priorities. Primarily, probably we can list three priorities. You can say what are the functional requirements in that building type, what are the time constraints we have for that building to be up and ready, and what sort of investment I guess we want to make in that building. And if this clarity is kind of really clear with us, then we can go to the architect and evaluate and also communicate in the right aspect that to what extent we are willing to compromise on the functional aspects for suitability from a design perspective, that okay, aesthetically if we compromise a little bit on functionality, probably we can get a better outcome. Similarly, I guess time is very important, because where you want to compromise, can you compromise on time? Time is a factor, and in your priority list, what comes first? Is time first or is investment first? So this is again an important aspect.
Yeah, most of the time I think in today's present day scenario, time is the topmost pioneering everything.
So with the conversations we've been having so far, as an individual, then I need to be clear on what is my building type and what are my priorities, a little bit of understanding of styles, and then probably have conversations with whatever shortlisted architects or architects we want to meet and kind of look at them from these perspective and have a free and frank conversation. Do you think that's a better approach before really finalizing that okay, this is the person I want to work with?
Yes, I think so.
And sometimes also the in the scheme of priorities, there are architecture firms which kind of need that complete freedom, particularly on the investment or the time side of it, to get that uniqueness of design. So in that context, how do you really kind of judge yourself? Because sometimes I may not know. I may have a list of priorities, and in the conversation with an architect, my priorities may change. So what happens then?
Yeah, I think if someone wants to have a very radical and innovative and creative solution for the building, then a person should be aware that the most important thing here is to give freedom on the budget, and more than the budget, on time frame, because it requires a little more time to customize any building if someone is providing solutions which are very unique and innovative, because that architect or designer may be working with different types of craftsmen to get things done, design and get it done, which are like custom made for you. Let's say, for example, like light system or chandeliers or hardwares. If that design firm is getting done with some working with artisans, which will be custom made only for you, then you should be framing your mind to have more flexibility on time constraint and even the budget also, I think.
So primarily, the whole decision that okay, he is going to be my architect will be driven after having myself clarity on these aspects and having conversations with architects, and then probably finding out that this person is gelling best with my thoughts
Yes.
and is able to communicate his ideas well with me, or I'm able to understand his ideas better. Because I think this synergy is important, because it's a journey which probably the architect and me will have together till we really complete the whole assignment.
Yes.